We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option, that they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed. I struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction. And I have massive scars across my chest, and the skin grafts that they took of my nipples are weeping fluid today, and they were grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said. After surgery, my grades in school plummeted. Everything that I went through did nothing to address my underlying mental health issues that I had. And my doctors, with their theories on gender, thought that all my problems would go away as soon as I was surgically transformed into something that vaguely resembled a boy. Their theories were wrong. The drugs and surgeries changed my body, but they did not and could not change the basic reality that I am and forever will be a female. When my specialist first told my parents that they could have a dead daughter or a live transgender son, I wasn't suicidal. I was a happy child who struggled because she was different. However, at 16, after my surgery, I did become suicidal. I'm doing better now, but my parents almost got the dead daughter promised to them by my doctors. My doctors had almost created the very nightmare they said they were trying to avoid. So what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to be given therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirm to my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option, that they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. Today, I should be at home with my family celebrating my 19th birthday, and instead I'm making a desperate plea to my elected representatives. Learn the lessons from other medical scandals like the opioid crisis, to recognize that doctors are human too, and sometimes they are wrong. My childhood was ruined along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. This needs to stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Thank you.
Today's your birthday?
It is.
You're a beautiful, brave woman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Ms. Reynolds, you're next. You may begin.
You know, it's interesting that there's like this weird attitude for women or for young girls who are in transition, where it's like, well, you can have your breast removed when you're younger, and that's fine, but you have to wait a couple of years to get bottom surgery. Like, why? It's interesting that there's this kind of flippancy that so many doctors give the idea of like having your breast removed.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they say, well, if you want them back, you just get breast implants.
Right. And like that's the thought process. Well, because you can get breast implants. It's like, yeah, but still, like, why is there shouldn't be like flippancy to like removing healthy parts of your body that affect your, sexual functioning just because you can get implants. It's wild to me. And it's weird because even when we have this conversation and people talk about it, it's like, oh, well, some people just hand wave away 15, 16-year-olds getting their breast removed, which is like, that's crazy. Like, I don't think 15, 16-year-olds should get breast implants. I don't think they should get breast removed. It's just, I don't know. Just wait till you're over 18.
Yeah, there's no rush. Her speech is super powerful stuff, obviously. I saw people posting clips of it. I love the framing of, puberty as a rite of passage instead of some kind of disease to mitigate. It's just what happened that now we're in this situation where, you're perceiving puberty as some kind of problem to solve. It's just so bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to deal with that.
I think to me her speech is very good and very powerful. And to me, the most powerful part of it was this idea where she said, when I was, a young girl and I went to these therapists, I didn't have thoughts of suicide. And yet they told my parents that if they don't transition me to be male, I would kill myself. And yet it was the opposite. By transitioning me, that's what made me have thoughts of suicide. That's what ruined my life essentially. And because they never addressed the actual underlying issues.
Yeah, they never asked the question we want them to ask.
Right. This is where why I think this stuff is so disgusting. It's like, this should be this used to be the case before the craze in the affirmative care model, came into being, that the therapist's role was to determine what was causing the depression, what was causing the anxiety in the first place. That's supposed to be their job, not to just say, oh, well, we just assume it's because you're transgender.
Yeah. One of the differences that no one has ever really been able to adequately explain to me is the difference between the desire to be the opposite sex and the distress from not becoming the opposite sex being overwhelming. Because I do feel like there's some point where it becomes, a mental illness, something you would describe as gender dysphoria.
Right.
I do think a lot of people, fantasize, just offhandedly about being the opposite sex. And I do think people can get fixated on a desire to be the opposite sex. That's separate from this kind of gender dysphoria distress that you're not the opposite sex. And I do feel like a lot of people are just being caught up in some kind of desire.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, when I talk to my mom about this, she's very, on the left of things. She's very feminist. And yet, this scares her because she feels like if she grew up today, there would have been a very high likelihood that she would have transitioned wrongly.
Wow.
Because when she was a little girl, she was super tomboy. She didn't like wearing dresses. She didn't like wearing any girl clothes. She liked wearing boy clothes. She liked doing boy things. And she would say that she would wish that she was a boy, not because she had gender dysphoria, but because, her mother, she had a brother, and her mother had this very kind of like old sexist attitude, towards gender roles, and would treat, or at least she felt that that her mother would treat her brother better, and that her grandmother would treat her brother better, and kind of had like, negative views about how women are supposed to be subservient, all this stuff. And because of all these like kind of negative, social things from her mother and her grandmother, she had all these thoughts about being a tomboy and wanting to be a guy. And she could see how in that frame of mind, she could confuse this for thinking she was trans if she was, in today's world.
Yeah.
And so it's scary.
Yeah,
It's
doctors
definitely
and
scary.
therapists kind of reinforcing this. It's so bizarre too, because it really is hearkening back to those gender stereotypes, which I thought all got past.
Well, it's funny because that's the central irony to this whole situation that I brought up years and years ago from the beginning, which is that, how is it that the same side that's saying gender is all a social construct, gender roles are all socially constructed, if that's all true, how can someone be born feeling they're the wrong gender? And
Yeah.
how could someone engaging in those cross-sex gender roles be indicative that they were born the wrong gender if this is all socially constructed? Like none of this stuff even makes sense under the social construction model.
Yeah, because you could construct a masculine female or a feminine male,
Right.
and you don't
And
have to change your body.
yeah, you would just say, well, if everything's a social construct, if gender's just a social construct, then no one would have to transition because you just teach them to feel fine the way they are, right? Because it's just a social construct.
Yeah, that's what they're describing as I forget the name of it now. Conversion therapy. That's what they're
Right.
describing as conversion therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just nothing about it. These internal contradictions just kind of like are waved away, are not thought about.
Yeah, so much of it is just being driven by the intuitions. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.